So they actually went and did it. They gave us a near perfect episode of The Handmaid's Tale right before it concludes next week. This episode had everything that makes the show great. From Lawrence sacrificing himself for the betterment of the people, June standing by and letting Nick get on the plane knowing full well that he'd die, Aunt Lydia delivering an incredibly powerful speech, Serena siding with Mayday, and also an ending that literally had my jaw on the floor. This was the best episode the show's given us in about 2 seasons, and I'm so happy that we got it. So with it now being released, I want to dive into the episode and break down all the important details within it. Here is The Handmaid's Tale Season 6, Episode 9, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Ending Explained. The ending of this episode was incredible. Not only did Commander Wharton and the other commanders that were against the progression of New Bethlehem perish, but we also saw Nick and Lawrence fall victim to the explosion too. It always kinda felt like Commander Lawrence was gonna die in this episode. I say this because when he was speaking with Naomi before sending her and Angela off to safety, he was making sure that Naomi knew that Angela liked to read her book before bed. Lawrence saying the words, "This kid wants to learn more than anything. We have to teach her," showed that she was the future of Gilead, and that future needed to be one that learned off of the back of what was happening in the present day. Him also saying to Angela, "Make some pictures for me, with lots of colours." It just felt very final and like it was almost a goodbye. It was as if he was just making sure that he was getting them to safety and laying down the foundations of how to take care of her in the best way possible. Lawrence took on the mission of putting a bomb on the plane that Wharton and the other commanders were going to be getting on to meet with the High Council in DC to plan a response for the attack that was carried out during the planned execution. And once planted on the plane, he was going to leave and drive off to safety. It was actually Serena that revealed the location of where the commanders would be, following June persuading her that Wharton was an evil man and that he wasn't the role model of a father. So Serena had truly picked her side at the end. With Serena's switching up taking place in the House of God as well, showing that she almost betrayed the religion that she believed in by revealing information that was going to harm it in the eyes of Gilead, it felt somewhat poetic. As Lawrence went to put the bomb on the plane, the commanders turned up, which meant that Lawrence wasn't able to plant it, and instead he had to go and board the plane with it, sacrificing himself for the greater cause and the fight against Gilead. Lawrence didn't agree with the way that Gilead was run and the way that people were treated, hence why he created New Bethlehem and was also working with Mark. And with June saying the words to him, "People will never be safe as long as they're alive," when referring to the commanders. I believe those words were going through his mind when he committed to getting on the plane and when he looked over at June. He believed that, and he knew that with them out of the picture, it weakened Gilead and it would contribute to the cause. Once Lawrence got on the plane, out of the blue, Nick got out of a car and got on the plane as well. There was a moment of hesitation before he got on, but I think we all knew that he was going to be getting on board because why else would he be there? June didn't say anything, as if she did, she'd be caught and end up being killed, but she was in tears knowing that somebody that she loved was going to be caught up in all of this. I was surprised that they killed Nick off in this way, to be honest, but seeing June helpless, not being able to save him even if she wanted to, was kind of heartbreaking. Nick said how Rose told him to go on the journey, but he also mentioned that June frequently told him to give all this up, showing the contrasts in the two women that were in Nick's life. And following him saying that, Lawrence said, "You should have listened to her." That was a line that was so chilling to hear because in that moment, we obviously knew what was going to happen and Lawrence did too. With the plane flying off into the distance, June walked out onto the airfield and her face lit up in an orange glow as the debris then rained down from the sky. It was such a shocking and powerful ending, and I'm quite gutted that both Nick and especially Lawrence are now gone. It's going to be interesting to see how June responds to this because despite their disagreements towards the end with Nick, I truly believe that she loved him. So I think it's going to knock her back just a little bit. The execution. A scene that was absolutely incredible was when after June and the other handmaids were captured by the Guardians, June and the rest of them were set to face the Gallows. This entire scene was just delivered so well. June was front and center as Commander Wharton was condemning her for her actions, as I think he wanted to make a public display of it to make sure that nobody else felt that they could carry out an uprising. And then once he'd done that, all of the other handmaids were brought onto the platform to face their death as well. The one that shocked me the most was when Aunt Lydia was walked out by the guards. She was told to ask for forgiveness from God before she died, and when it seemed like she was about to, she changed her speech and said that the girls were prisoners of wicked, godless men. It was a moment that hit so hard, and it was actually a really emotional scene. It continued on from Aunt Lydia changing sides last week, and it cemented her fully on the side of progression. June also gave a similar speech before she was set to die and asked for forgiveness, but in the final moments she changed her mind and insulted the commanders of Gilead, which led to her being raised up by the crane. And I thought there was actually a chance that she was going to die there. As this happened, the likes of Luke, Rita, and other members of Mayday were there, which caused that bloodbath to ensue that we all wanted to see last week. Aunt Phoebe can sure fight, can't she? As we saw that she was revealed to be undercover and actually worked for the CIA. When she started fighting back, I was in shock. This whole fight scene was an emotional roller coaster. The passion in the likes of Rita fighting back and Luke also participating in the fight was something that I really felt through the screen. The score was simply phenomenal too. With June laying on the ground, the score captured the environment of war, and it did a great job in getting that inspiring feeling across when June was saved. With the American planes flying over Gilead and bombing the city, it showed that for the first time, Gilead and the commanders were backed into a corner and they really didn't know what to do and how to handle the situation that was going on. All of the girls thankfully got away from the gallows and none of them ended up dying, not even Aunt Lydia, which I was grateful for after the speech. If Wharton had listened to June and chose love and been the man that Serena thought he could have been, then that may not have happened in the way that it did. But instead, he stood by his beliefs of running Gilead as a horror show which had men twisting the words of God, and he ultimately paid the highest price for it. Serena. The first time we saw Serena in this episode, I felt that vulnerability from her. The darkness that was around her, the open space that felt like it was all-consuming, and with a handmaid killing on the front lawn, you could tell that if Serena was spotted, then she'd definitely be a target. However, she managed to get to Commander Lawrence's home and get to safety. Although Naomi being the stick-her-nose-in type that she is, she got Commander Wharton to go round to their home and to speak with Serena. I did question why Serena so easily fell back into Wharton's arms with the promise of him just removing the handmaid and aligning more with her views, because she was quite literally exposed to the type of person that he was in the previous episode. However, the reason why is because Commander Wharton is just a manipulator, or should I say, was a manipulator. So whilst I did question why, it did ultimately make sense. It was only once Mark entered the home and when she was taken to protective custody that she changed her mind on Wharton following June speaking in the church. June and Serena's relationship is one that's had the most ups and downs out of everybody, but she did reveal the location of where Wharton was going to be so they could attack. She said, "You're asking me to put a target on my husband's back," which did frustrate me, because she literally left him the previous day. But with June making her realize that progression was never going to happen with these traditional Gilead followers in charge. For the likes of a future for Noah and the next generation, she finally saw the light and knew what needed to be done, so Serena did do a good thing in the end. My review of the episode. This was hands down the best episode of the season. It's everything I wanted in the build up to the finale of the show. It had action, it had emotion, it had tension, it had character development, and it had closure for the characters, which I did really like and appreciate. You could tell that this must have been an emotional one on set too, because it was emotional just watching it. One thing that I loved about the episode was that it started with "Look What You Made Me Do" playing as the handmaids were running to safety and the bombs were going off. It was a good song choice because it showed that the girls were quite literally driven to the point of murder. The handling of Lawrence's death was one that I thought was executed really well. In recent times, he was a man of progression and he was faced with death regardless of what situation he went down, as the commanders planned on killing him regardless. So I feel like with that in his mind, he made peace with the fact that at least if he died whilst on the plane, it would wipe out the commanders that were causing issues and were also going to be going after him. Elizabeth Moss truly needs to take a bow for this episode as well. Not only was it performed so well by her, but she also directed it too. She quite literally gave us the perfect episode of the show and captured so many different feelings for the viewer when watching it. I was shocked at the deaths, I was haunted by the gallows, I was inspired by the speeches, and I was hopeful for the future at the end. When it came to the performances, the four characters that stood out to me were June, Serena, Commander Lawrence, and also Aunt Lydia. They delivered some of their finest, and even though the likes of Aunt Lydia was only in the episode for a brief moment, she stole the scene that she was in. With a penultimate episode as good as this, I do wonder what that means for the finale. Sometimes when the second last episode is really strong, it makes the finale weaker. But to be honest, I feel like this was the true finale, and next week's episode might be like an epilogue of some kind. As the description is, June reflects on her experience in Gilead and decides what to do next, which makes me think that it's not going to be action-filled and it's going to be more about what's on the horizon for the future of Gilead. I'm so glad that we got this episode and that it was done in the way that it was. It's going to be one of the most memorable ones for the final season, and with it coming at episode 9, it was definitely worth the wait. So, there you have it, The Handmaid's Tale Season 6 Episode 9 Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of The Handmaid's Tale being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.